The story of a young boy called Joseph that was loved deeply by his beloved father Jacob, that became bondservant and a prisoner because of jealousy from his brothers. But the end will tell. Let's dive in. The story of Joseph from the book of Genesis, chapter 37 to 50. Part 1. Joseph was born to Jacob and Rachel in Padan Aram. Jacob, who later became known as Israel, had 12 sons by 4 women, Leah, Rachel, and their maidservants, Zilpah and Bilhah. However, Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was the son of his old age and the firstborn of his beloved Rachel. This favoritism was evident to everyone, especially when Jacob made Joseph a richly ornamented robe, often called the coat of many colors. This special gift stirred envy and resentment among Joseph's brothers. Joseph's childhood was marked by this favoritism, and his brothers' jealousy grew daily. Despite their animosity, Joseph remained close to his father, learning about the family's traditions and the promises God had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a young boy, Joseph showed signs of a deep, contemplative nature and a special connection with God, which set him apart from his siblings. One day, Joseph had a dream that seemed to signify his future importance. In his dream, he and his brothers were binding sheaves of grain in the field when his sheaf suddenly stood upright, and their sheaves gathered around and bowed down to it. When he told his brothers about the dream, their jealousy turned into hatred. "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" They sneered, the seeds of their contempt growing stronger. Undeterred by their reactions, Joseph had another dream. This time, he saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. When he shared this dream with his father and brothers, Jacob rebuked him gently. "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" Yet, despite his rebuke, Jacob kept the matter in mind, pondering what these dreams might mean. Thus, Joseph's early years were a mix of his father's deep affection, his brothers' growing enmity, and the mysterious dreams that hinted at a grand destiny. Little did Joseph know these dreams were the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would take him far from his home and family, leading him through trials and triumphs to fulfill a divine purpose. As Joseph grew older, the tension between him and his brothers only intensified. Jacob, oblivious to the depth of his other sons' resentment, often sent Joseph to check on them while they were tending the flocks. This only added to their frustration as they saw Joseph as a spy who reported their actions back to their father. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to find his brothers who were grazing their father's flocks near Shechem. "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks. And bring word back to me," Jacob instructed. Joseph set out, eager to fulfill his father's request, but unaware of the peril that awaited him. After wandering in the fields looking for his brothers, Joseph found a man who told him that they had moved on to Dothan. With determination, Joseph followed them to this new location. When his brothers saw him approaching from a distance, their hatred boiled over, and they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Reuben, the eldest brother, intervened, hoping to rescue Joseph later. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness. but don't lay a hand on him." His suggestion was accepted, and when Joseph arrived, they took his ornate robe and threw him into the empty cistern. While they were eating their meal, a caravan of Ishmaelites from Gilead approached, loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to Egypt. Judah saw an opportunity and proposed a new plan. "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed, and they sold Joseph for 20 shekels of silver. The Ishmaelites took Joseph to Egypt, and the brothers dipped his robe in goat blood, presenting it to their father. Jacob, believing his beloved son was dead, mourned deeply. Meanwhile, Joseph, now a bondservant, was heading towards an unknown future, completely unaware of the remarkable destiny that lay ahead. The Ishmaelite traders brought Joseph to Egypt, where they sold him to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, and the captain of the guard. Despite the abrupt and harsh change in his circumstances, Joseph remained steadfast and faithful to God. His integrity and hard work soon earned him favor in Potiphar's eyes. Potiphar noticed that the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in everything he did. Recognizing Joseph's capabilities and trustworthiness, Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household, entrusting him with all that he owned. From the time Joseph was put in charge, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he had not concerned himself with anything except the food he ate. Joseph, now an overseer in Potiphar's house, managed all his master's affairs with diligence and wisdom. However, his handsome appearance and well-built physique caught the attention of Potiphar's wife. Day after day, she tried to get his attention, but Joseph consistently refused her advances. "My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Despite his steadfast refusals, Potiphar's wife persisted. One day, when none of the household servants were inside, she caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But Joseph left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Enraged by his rejection, she called her household servants and falsely accused Joseph of trying to assault her. She kept his cloak beside her until Potiphar came home, then repeated her false accusation. Potiphar, furious at the supposed betrayal, had Joseph thrown into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Although unjustly imprisoned, Joseph did not lose faith. The Lord was with him, showing him kindness and granting him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. The warden put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners, and he was responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Thus, even in the depths of the prison, Joseph's integrity and faithfulness to God shone brightly, setting the stage for the next phase of his extraordinary journey. Life in prison was harsh, but Joseph's unwavering faith and exemplary conduct soon earned him respect and trust. The warden placed Joseph in charge of all the prisoners, and he became responsible for everything that happened there. His organizational skills and integrity brought order to the prison, and the warden, confident in Joseph's abilities, did not concern himself with anything under Joseph's care. While in prison, Joseph encountered two of Pharaoh's officials who had offended their master, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. They were both placed under Joseph's supervision. One night, each of these officials had a dream that disturbed them deeply. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed their troubled expressions and asked, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The chief cupbearer went first, recounting his dream. "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." Joseph listened attentively and then said, "This is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." Encouraged by the favorable interpretation, the chief baker shared his dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Joseph answered, "This is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." 3 days later, it happened just as Joseph had said. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position and impaled the chief baker, fulfilling the interpretations of their dreams. Despite Joseph's plea, the chief cupbearer forgot about Joseph once he was restored to his position, leaving him to languish in prison for 2 more years. Through these trials, Joseph's faith remained unshaken, and his gift of interpreting dreams set the stage for his eventual rise from prisoner to a position of immense power, as ordained by God's plan. 2 years passed, and Joseph remained in prison, still forgotten by the chief cupbearer. However, his time of elevation was drawing near, as Pharaoh himself was about to have dreams that would change Joseph's life forever. One night, Pharaoh had 2 disturbing dreams that left him deeply troubled. In the first dream, he was standing by the Nile when 7 healthy, well-fed cows emerged from the river and began grazing among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside the healthy cows on the riverbank. The ugly, gaunt cows then ate up the 7 healthy cows, but no one could explain the significance of this. In the second dream, Pharaoh saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 full, good heads. Pharaoh awoke, troubled by these dreams, and called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them. The chief cupbearer, remembering Joseph's accurate interpretation of his own dream, spoke up. "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings," he said to Pharaoh. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. He was brought hastily from the dungeon, shaved, changed his clothes, and stood before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph humbly replied, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh recounted his dreams to Joseph. After listening, Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. Pharaoh was impressed by Joseph's wisdom and his connection with God, leading to a pivotal moment that would elevate Joseph to a position of great authority in Egypt. Pharaoh, astonished by Joseph's interpretation and the wisdom of his advice, turned to his officials and said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Recognizing that Joseph's insight came from a divine source, Pharaoh decided to act on his suggestion. "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's hand. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had Joseph ride in a chariot as his second in command, and men shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus, Joseph was put in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, overseeing the collection and storage of grain during the 7 years of abundance. He ordered the construction of storehouses in every city and ensured that surplus grain was systematically stored. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see the continuation, please like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell. God bless you.